Tonight on Bridge City News, more than 50 million Americans have cast ballots in the U.S. presidential election, including U.S. President Donald Trump. Joe Biden says he does not want his campaign events to be super spreaders. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford weighs tighter COVID-19 rules for specific regions.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he's considering imposing stricter COVID-19 restrictions on at least one more Toronto area region where daily new cases have been rising lately. Ford says it's concerning to see the numbers go up in Halton region, and he'll make a decision come Monday.
With regards to modified stage 2, our numbers in Halton are going up, and I just wanted to get a sense of are there any going to be decisions with regards to putting us in a modified stage 2 as well?
Well, we're going to have that discussion. It's very concerning out in Halton. I had a good conversation with the mayors out in Halton as well. We're going to have to discuss that over the weekend, and we'll have that answer on Monday. But I appreciate that. But folks in Halton, I know they're doing a great job, but it's concerning right now. I've seen the numbers go up again.
U.S. President Donald Trump stomped in the battleground state of Florida, slamming rival Joe Biden for his remarks on oil.
One of the most stunning moments last night was when Joe Biden admitted that he wants to abolish the oil industry. That wasn't too good. Did you see him this morning? I didn't really mean that. I didn't mean that. That was the last question. They talked about that. I said, whoa, this is the big point of the evening. Remember, I said, well, do you want to get rid of oil and gas? Is that, yeah, well, we want to phase it out. I said, thank you. Texas, are you watching? Pennsylvania, Oklahoma, Ohio, are you watching? But that could be one of the worst mistakes made in presidential debate history. We're going to see. We hope it is. Biden's plan would mean America's seniors have no air conditioning during the summer, no heat during the winter, and no electricity during peak hours. It's true. You know, he wants wind. He wants wind. You know, when the wind doesn't blow. Let's watch the president tonight, darling, on television. I'm sorry. We can't. The wind's not blowing tonight.
U.S. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden told supporters in Pennsylvania on Saturday that he misses up-close campaigning, but doesn't necessarily want his events to become super spreaders.
Folks, I have an admission to make. There's so many of you here. I wish I could go to car and meet you all. I don't like the idea of all this distance, but it's necessary. I appreciate you being safe. What we don't want to do is become super spreaders. More than 220,000 dead Americans because of COVID-19. And yesterday, while he's telling us everything's all right, we saw the highest number, 85,000 new cases in one day since this pandemic began. And yesterday, the worst day we've ever had. Yet, at the debate on Thursday night, Donald Trump said and is still saying, we're rounding the corner. It's going away. We're learning how to live with it. What I told him at the debate, we're not learning how to live with it. You're asking us to learn how to die with it. And it's wrong.
Despite weather conditions, Lethbridge residents have supported the Lethbridge Farmers Market every Saturday to shop for gourmet popcorn, organic greens, and baked goods. Here's a look at two vendors that shared their experience at the farmers market this year.
It was pretty slow to start off, but overall it's been a pretty good season at the farmers market. This is our last Saturday here, but they are having a Halloween Christmas market next week, so you can come check that out. I know there's still lots of exhibitors and they're handing out candy next week. The Christmas market is November 13th and 14th, as well as November 27th and 28th. So we'll be here for all 4 of those days. So it's a great idea to come on down to the farmers market and to the Christmas market to support small local businesses. A lot of these are ma and pa shops, and this is what they do to provide for their families. And also then the money stays in the local economy, which helps everyone maintain their jobs. So it's a great idea to support local for your Christmas shopping. And we'd love to see you.
We are a company that grows microgreens, and we also grow gourmet mushrooms. But it's a year-round growing process. Everything's grown indoors, and it's just a way to be able to bring healthy, fresh, and vibrant greens to the community, and a way for people to eat really nutritious, eat really fresh, know how their food is grown, and to know that what they're eating is organic and healthy for their bodies. When you're supporting local, you're helping us as small business owners, especially small farmers, to grow and to keep our businesses running, because it's all about keeping our economy strong and healthy and growing, and supporting the community and showing that spirit and that community love that Lethbridge is so great for.
Closer to home, faith groups across Lethbridge are advocating for local homeless populations to get warm as temperatures plunge below zero. The most vulnerable need our help now more than ever. Karen says coming across homeless people who are scantily clad in frigid temperatures is a common sight.
They just have little sweaters on, hey? They come here to the shelter, to Streets Alive to get sweaters, but still, when you go to the shelter, no, you have to take it off. It's really hard for us people, really it is. I cry when I go in there.
Formerly homeless, Horvat shares her first-hand experience of spending her days in the bitter cold.
Winter is really rough. Like, there's nowhere, especially during COVID, where the homeless population can just kind of warm up and relax. So they've got the shelter and whatnot where they can sleep, but they gotta vacate first thing in the morning, and then they're out in the cold all day long. And so I'd leave the shelter 8 o'clock in the morning and put on my abominable snowman gear, and that was like how I spent my day.
Leo will not be sleeping in a warm place, at least for the next 5 nights.
Well, 3 days ago I was taking a shower, and one of the ladies in there came in there and trying to rush me out of there, and I was telling her to get out, and she wouldn't get out, so then I turned and go, get that F out of here, and she still wouldn't get out. So I threw my towel at her. So all you want to show, here you go, and I threw the towel at her, and then off that, they kicked me out, banned me for 5 days.
When asked what he will do to stay warm, Leo didn't have much of an answer.
I don't know, pretty much I don't like sitting around too much because my body gets cold, and so I go stand by one of those things, warm up a bit, and just start walking around. Pretty much walk around all night.
So how can you help keep someone warm?
Warm clothing is important, and the ability to layer. More often than not, it's more than just one jacket and one whatever. They're putting on multiple layers to stay warm, multiple layers of pants, socks, weatherproof, warm insulated shoes, boots, and of course gloves, toques, and all the other winter attire.
I would urge people, if you have extra jackets, if you have gloves, if you have toques, warm stuff, just, make it available to people. If you see them on the streets, just hand it to them. There's nothing wrong with that either. So if you see someone who needs it, just give them what they need.
Recapping one of our top news stories. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he's considering imposing stricter COVID-19 restrictions on at least one more Toronto area region where daily new cases have been rising lately. Ford says it's concerning to see the numbers go up in Halton region, and he'll make a decision come Monday. And a look at weekend weather. Cloudy overnight with a 30% chance of light snow this evening and a low of -18 without the wind chill. And for tomorrow, a bit of a nicer day with sunshine and a high of -5. Keep bundling up though, because there is still risk of frostbite. Coming up after the break, we sit down with Alberta's Agriculture Minister, Devin Dreeshen, who lauded the resilience of our province's ag industry through tough times.
Alberta has seen its tough times when it comes to the energy sector, but we had negative oil prices combined with COVID-19, and to see agriculture kind of ride out through all of that, with the provinces expecting a bumper crop this year and strong cattle prices, it is something that it is a bright spot within the Alberta economy.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Bikers Building Bridges is hosting their second annual Halloween drive-through trunk or treat, taking place at Exhibition Park's north parking lot on Halloween night, going from 5:30 to 9 p.m. Come out for a spooky good time. Decorate your vehicle and hand out candy safely. For details about this event and to register your trunk, visit bikersbuildingbridges.com. The Juno Beach Centre is Canada's only museum in Normandy dedicated to honouring the contributions of 1.1 million men and women who served during World War II. This year, support a worthy cause and take part in the Remembrance Day races being held until November 28th. You can register for one of 3 virtual race distances, each with its own special meaning. Participants will receive a race kit that includes a commemorative medal, a Juno Beach collector coin, a bracelet, and more. For details and to register, visit junobeach.org. Bring your lunch and enjoy beautiful live music at the same time. Come out November 6th to the first Friday Lunch and Listen concert series featuring performances by the University of Lethbridge Conservatory of Music in Cass's Community Room beginning 12:15 p.m. and ending at 1. First Friday events are an initiative brought to you by the Heart of Our City Committee. For a full listing of upcoming events, visit firstfridaylethbridge.com. And that's your Bridge City News community calendar.
The Alberta government recently announced partnerships with 2 post-secondary institutions, Lethbridge College and the University of Lethbridge. To talk more about it is the Alberta Agriculture Minister, Devin Dreeshen. Thanks for joining us in studio today, Devin.
Well, great to be here. Thank you very much, Hal, for having me on your show.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about this big investment, $2 million for the college, $1.8 million for the U of L. Tell me more about these initiatives.
Well, it was a great partnership between the Alberta government and the college and the university here in Lethbridge, something that both colleges have an amazing research program already, and we have within the Department of Agriculture and Forestry provincially had researchers that essentially were duplicating work. And when we thought and came to them directly and said, if we could have our researchers go into your program at the college and the university, could you see a benefit? And it's something that, whether it's from irrigation to cattle to bee pollinators, it's something that they thought that there could be an opportunity to have more programming at their post-secondary institutions, having opportunities for researchers to be taught by new researchers being taught by our researchers, and really just whether it's programming opportunities for the college and university, as well as just more research capacity being leveraged from those 2 institutions. So it was really a win-win for agriculture.
And there's some jobs being created as a result too.
Yeah, we have 3 researchers directly that are being transferred over to the university. We're still working out the details on the college, but it's great to see that this research that ultimately is being led by producers, by farmers here in Alberta, they're actually setting the tone of what type of research they want to see done in the province. And it's great to see that this research continues and again has that leveraging aspect being done at the college and the university here in Lethbridge.
Now, Devin, the province also recently announced a historic $815 million investment into 8 different irrigation districts to modernize irrigation infrastructure and to increase water storage capacity throughout southern Alberta. Which districts are they, and why do you think this was so important for our region?
So yeah, last week it was historic. We had 8 out of the 13 irrigation districts in the province that actually created a consortium amongst themselves, and they signed a deal with the provincial government as well as the Canada Infrastructure Bank for $815 million. Half of that came from the Canada Infrastructure Bank. That's a loan that the districts will have to pay back, but also 20% funding from the districts, 30% grant from the provincial government to make up that $815 million. And it's tremendous irrigation in the province of Alberta. We have about 1.7 million acres currently. With this expansion, it'll be another 200,000 irrigated acres. And just the economic impact is huge. It's about $436 million annually added to Alberta's economy and GDP just with this significant investment into irrigation. And then there's the spin-off jobs, the car dealerships being able to have more economic activity. You're going to see food processors wanting to set up shop here in southern Alberta because of that reliable irrigated acres that they rely on for specialty crops, whether it's sugar beets or potatoes. So it's an overall good news story for the southern Alberta economy and the Alberta economy in general.
Many people would argue that the energy sector is the economic engine that really drives our province, and many would say our country. But the energy sector, as you know, has been struggling for quite some time, the oil and gas sector. Do you think maybe the UCP government is putting more of its focus into agriculture right now?
Well, even with this $850 million investment, there's about 8,000 jobs that will be created. So about 1,300 just on the construction side, and then almost 7,000 from indirect and direct jobs that actually result from the expansion. So that's from the farming to the food processing, everything that goes along with it. So Alberta has seen its tough times when it comes to the energy sector, but we had negative oil prices combined with COVID-19, and to see agriculture kind of ride out through all of that, with the provinces expecting a bumper crop this year and strong cattle prices, it is something that it is a bright spot within the Alberta economy.
Moving forward, Devin, what kind of support do you potentially see down the road, for the grain sector and as well for our beef and hog producers?
Well, it's something that we've, early on in 2019, last year, we made an initiative, a $1.4 billion private investment target. So we've been very focused at agriculture and forestry to try to do the right things to attract, whether it's foreign investment, Canadian investment, provincial investment to the province, to actually have more value-added products developed here in Alberta. So that helps out farmers because they have another buyer of their produce, as well as a job creation, because you're actually going to have people in the food processing sector making more products, and rather than shipping it out on a train to go on a boat, you're actually doing that value added here in the province. So that's something that we're well on the way to hit that target of $1.4 billion in private investment. We saw it here in Lethbridge last year of a $300 million expansion of Cavendish. We've been talking to them for the potato processors to be able to try to do more, to double that footprint. So we are working with food processors to attract investment here in the province and let them do what they do best, which is create high quality food.
China still will not accept Canadian canola from our farmers here. A lot of it's tied in, many people would argue, with Canada detaining Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou. Ever since then, it's like, no, we're not going to accept the Canadian canola. How much has that been a problem? How much has that hurt our canola producers?
Well, it's a billions of dollars of market access loss due to what China did, but it is something that really gave, I think, a shock to the industry to realize that it's good for them to be able to shop around, to make sure that they have other trading partners around the world. And the industry essentially did it for the last couple of years. So that is nice to see that they are directing sales to other areas. It obviously has a depressing price if there's a large market that is you're not going to be able to sell to. But overall, it's something that it did hurt Canadian farmers. But at the end of the day, it's something that we had to live with. And again, we're seeing grain companies in Canada find, international trade is like water. It finds a way. And it's great to see that at least canola prices now are relatively stable in Canada.
So let's talk about some of those other markets, Devin, instead of putting all of our eggs, pardon the pun, into two baskets, China and the United States. Where else is Canada looking to? Which other countries?
Well, it's actually, again, part of our economic relaunch and our Alberta's recovery strategy, especially focusing on agriculture, is we're doubling our international trade offices. So we obviously are focusing on the U.S. because they're our one and only neighbor. They're a huge consumer of what we have here in the province and what we produce, but also looking at Mexico, also Singapore as a major hub in the Southeast Asia market, because it's a growing area. They always want a high demand for their growing middle class of higher quality food, of higher protein. And so that is something that we produce, high quality food with clean air, clean land, and clean water. And that's something that sells internationally extremely well. And so we want to make sure that we can go out and promote our agriculture products around the world to every country, but to the leading major ones right now. And that's why we doubled our international footprint with our agriculture trade officers.
How much do you think COVID-19 has really impacted our farmers and ranchers?
Well, it was something early on. We asked the federal government to deem agriculture as an essential service. We did it, I think we were the first province to actually do it when COVID hit, because of the fact that everybody needs to eat. And it's something that we want to make sure that the supply chain of whether it's grain on trains getting to market, or even inputs coming into the province, whether it be fertilizer or medication for livestock, we want to make sure that those supply chains were not disrupted. And so it is something that the federal government did finally deem it an essential service, so that there wouldn't be any disruption in international flow. But it's something that I had a lot of farmers, especially in seeding, that would call and say, well, self-isolating is pretty easy because I'm in a tractor cab miles away from anybody else. So overall, I think when you look at agriculture compared to other industries, it fared relatively well due to COVID-19 this year.
I've been talking to some farmers as well here in southwestern Alberta. They're still irate about the carbon tax. They're saying, you know what, I have to dry my grains and this is really killing my business right now. What are you hearing from farmers? And especially now that Trudeau Liberals are talking about another carbon tax on top of the current one.
Yeah, the carbon tax obviously had a terrible impact to farmers because they are a large user of energy, whether it's from heating barns or drying grain or operating equipment. But yes, as you point out, the clean fuel standards, it could be even worse than the carbon tax. So we are fighting the carbon tax at the Supreme Court. We wanted the Alberta Court of Appeals to 4-1 decision that the federal carbon tax was unconstitutional. So the musing of this clean fuel standards has the possibility of being even worse. So we are looking at it as a provincial standpoint of let's truly understand what the actual cost would be, B, push and nudge the federal government as much as we can to say that this is something that doesn't make sense, especially in our agriculture sector. It's so heavily trade dependent. We do compete internationally, and to have trade exposed industries like agriculture have to pay another huge carbon tax, it really just hurts our competitiveness and the bottom line of our industry. So the clean fuel standard has so much negative consequences if it were to be implemented, and it's something that I'm pretty sure as the province of Alberta we'd be fighting against.
What kind of support is Ottawa really giving the Alberta agriculture sector here? And, you know, I mean, recently, Seamus O'Regan, Minister, mentioned the $60 million to fight pine beetles here in Alberta. So that really helps. So is there a stronger connection as opposed to Ottawa and the energy sector?
Well, giving credit where credit's due, Minister O'Regan, I met with him when Premier Kenney led a delegation down to Ottawa, and that was the very first thing I brought up was the mountain pine beetle. The federal government gave, I think it was $75 million over 3 years to the maritime provinces to fight to their equivalent of the mountain pine beetle in those provinces that was going around provincial borders. I made the case that the mountain pine beetle originated in British Columbia, spread over, wasn't managed properly, spread over into Alberta. We actually have the Saskatchewan government giving us $1 million a year to fight the mountain pine beetle in Alberta so it doesn't spread into Saskatchewan along the boreal forest. So my argument to Minister O'Regan was this is a national issue and there should be federal funds coming. And a year plus later, he did deliver. So $60 million over 3 years is coming from the federal government, and that'll be on top of what the province spends every year to fight the mountain pine beetle. And since 2004-06, I believe, we've spent over $500 million combating this disease or this pest that ultimately threatens about $11 billion worth of pine trees in the province of Alberta. So
it's quite a bit, yeah.
It's something that we have to do everything we can to try to mitigate it. And again, I did publicly thank Minister O'Regan for helping Alberta in this national fight.
Now, you're a farmer yourself. You farm out in central Alberta outside of Innisfail. And did you have a bit of a bumper crop this year?
Yeah, the barley was fantastic. Wheat was kind of normal. Canola wasn't as good as we were hoping for. But again, it's interesting to look at the crop reports from across the province. And in the southern parts, I think every crop was near a bumper if you could dodge the hail. Central Alberta was kind of a mixed reading. But there was a band north of Edmonton that really just had excess moisture the entire year, a lot of unseeded acres. And the Agriculture Financial Services Corporation, AFSC, their latest report is about 9-10% higher than the 10-year average. So an amazing overall crop coming out of Alberta, something that the CP and CN, our rail lines and the grain companies are trying to wrestle with. How can we actually make sure we can get this crop out to market?
If not, we need bigger silos, right, to store all of these
Well,
crops.
and on-farm storage is obviously an issue. And it's something that but it's not a good news story overall throughout the province. There are some areas, again, that band north of Edmonton, that they've had about 4 or 5 really bad years of just excess moisture. So although overall it could be a record crop this year, which is fantastic for the province, there are still pockets where it wasn't a good year. And that's something that the latest estimate that I saw was almost $500 million going out in crop insurance payments to those very wet areas of the province. So overall, a great ag news story, but there are some problem areas. But again, that's why we have crop insurance here in the province.
What are some of the issues moving forward that a lot of our farmers and ranchers will face outside of COVID-19, the pandemic, outside of the carbon tax, and lack of moisture or too much moisture?
Well, weather is always going to be a difficult issue, but I think so many farmers, they view red tape and just too much government interference as something that really holds them back. So whether it is a clean fuel standards or new regulations coming down on them, they're always fighting on the margins, and when they always get added government, so many farmers just say, just do no harm, just leave us alone as a government. So that's something that we, from a provincial standpoint, do everything we can to just set the playing field for our farmers and ranchers and let them compete on a global scale, because they have the knowledge, they have the know-how, and they can compete and do a fantastic job. Alberta beef is world-renowned. Our high-quality grains that we produce here and ship around the world, usually we import it back when it's been processed in other areas. But overall, agriculture is so resilient and strong. It's always been woven into the fabric of Alberta. And it's something that I think modern agriculture, especially with the research announcements that we made today, it's something that it always has to be cutting edge and leading the pack, because if you don't, you end up getting swamped. So agriculture is a real good bright spot for the province.
Alberta Agriculture Minister Devin Durishan, congrats on the bumper crop, and thanks for joining me in studio today.
Well, thank you so much, Hal. I really appreciate it.
Trying to navigate your teen years isn't always easy, especially in today's world of social media. Today's teens seem to face so many more challenges than they ever have before. My next guest has started a new business endeavor called Bold and Brave to help empower youth to find their voice, their value, and their self-respect, among other things, of course. Dana Holland, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Dana, I have to say you are very brave to be starting up a business in this COVID environment when so many others are shutting their doors. You're taking on a whole new endeavor. So congratulations, by the way. You really are bold and brave.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
So, Dana, tell me, what is Bold and Brave all about? How did you start it?
Well, Bold and Brave is basically a program that is meant to really help youth. And I guess in turn, it's something that's for everyone. How I look at things is that if you are able to encourage the youth that are around us, there will be a ripple effect. So it'll affect their siblings, their family, their friends, and eventually the community. There's really no stopping these kids. They're going to continue to move forward. And so if we can provide things that build their confidence, I really felt that was super important here at this time.
Mm-hmm. How did you get the idea for it? Are you thinking back to your own youth, perhaps?
There's a portion of that. I know that to me, there wasn't a lot of things that I could go to or that I was confident in looking into, I guess. I wanted to make Bold and Brave something that anyone felt they could go to, felt that they could reach out to, felt they could be part of that community. And it's very much an all-inclusive program, community business. I've been able to speak at a few different programs, which I loved, and I was grateful that they were here and that there's lots of different programs around the city. And I really give accolades to all the people who have gone before me, who help youth. I think that that's an amazing thing and an amazing endeavor. And I just felt there was some things that were being missed. And that's kind of where Bold and Brave came in. I wanted to kind of hit the niches and the different kids that maybe other programs weren't hitting, or maybe they weren't as in the media as much. Maybe they aren't known. And I felt like we could work together within the community, and maybe I pass on people and let them know, hey, there's these other programs with the whole goal of working together to build kids.
Mm-hmm. So how does the program work exactly?
So right now, being that, like you stated, it's during the COVID time, so a lot of people don't know who I am. They don't know why I'm here. They're just saying, you're just a new person who wants to meet with my kids. So for me, during COVID, we wanted to start out with doing some workshops and putting out basically the information and what we're trying to teach. So um, there's programs out there that last for weeks at a time, which I think are excellent. But for us, we're going to start out with workshops and really let what we're teaching come out through the youth to promote what we're trying to do.
Okay, so what made you start this now? Is this an idea you've had for a while?
Yeah, I remember back in probably 2012, 2013, I had this thought. But I think at that point, I could probably attest that I probably wasn't as bold or brave as I am now. And I felt, and I know that's totally a play on words and whatnot, but I really felt that at that point I wasn't prepared. Um, Maybe I didn't have the resources, maybe wasn't confident enough. There's a lot of different things going on during that time, but I recently had a few conversations with some people earlier this year, and a few of them were like, "Well, what's your plan?" And I was like, "I don't necessarily have one." They're like, "Well, why don't you make one?" And it was just something as simple as that from a few people who believed in me, who thought that there was a need, that made me literally sit down for about a month um, and get a ton of things together, reached out to a ton of people that I knew, and got the whole ball rolling with our name and with getting things out there and realizing there was so much I needed to do. So I just did it.
Good for you. Congratulations. So why is it so important for you to mentor youth? What is your message to youth?
I think that's a very good question. I think I want youth to know, and any teen to know, that they're important beyond measure. Their lives matter, that they have so much potential, and their opportunities to do so much in this world is beyond what they can even imagine, and lots of times beyond what lots of the adults around them can imagine. You look at lots of the people who have done some major things in life, and I bet you there wasn't everyone saying, "Oh yeah, you're going to do that." They just did it. And I think that's one of the coolest pieces to this program, that I want every teen that comes um, to know they're welcome, to know that they're able, to know that they can accomplish anything as long as they have grit and they pursue their dreams and they do the things they need to do, like get educated about things they're interested about. Okay, how do you do that? You go find somebody who knows about it, and give them these tools and these skills to help them realize that really anything's possible, regardless. I guess a huge part is regardless of your situation.
And what are the age group of the kids that we're talking?
Age groups for right now. So we're basically ranging between 11 and 14, or sorry, 11 and 18. Our workshops we're putting on right now are just for the young ladies. Right now, we're doing 11 to 14 for the workshop 1, and workshop 2 is 15 to 18. And we plan to have some workshops for the young men starting in February of 2021.
Okay, yes, and I believe your husband Carl is kind of taking this on with you. And will he be more or less mentoring the young men while you mentor the young ladies?
We're going to kind of play it two ways. We have a bunch of different people that we're working with. I have a local counselor who's been working with me. I have another good friend from Tabor who basically is in basically design arts. She's been doing a ton with me. And I have a couple different like masters, people who are working on their masters in psychology, and who are very much into outdoors, who are other presenters. We also are working with someone from the University of Lethbridge who's one of the hammer throwers. So we have lots of different people that we're reaching out to. We also have someone who's a self-defense instructor. So our goal was to reach all different niches of all different people who have a bunch of different interests, because this isn't just a one size fits all.
Okay, so these would be like your keynote speakers and some other people that you're bringing in to help mentor the youth. So you were saying part of your business is the workshops that you're planning to provide. So tell us about these workshops. What can these kids expect?
A huge part of the workshops is basically to focus on the health and wellness of kids. teens and all those around them. So huge focus. We're going to be doing a lot of scenario type situations and things that they could encounter. We're going to have kind of planning and thoughts and just different interactive activities. We're also going to have a self-defense and just a lot of interaction. Obviously, COVID with all the COVID rules, but still to get these teens to know that there's other kids just like them, and that if they work together, they can accomplish so much.
And I think that's part of, I think part of what youth are suffering from these days is isolation. I mean, now school is back in session, but I think that was a huge thing from March on through the summers. A lot of teens were really suffering with the isolation, and this is kind of a way to bring them together, right?
Yes, and that was a huge thing with the COVID thing. I've had people ask me why now, and for me, there's a lot of kids that need it. So I'm taking a chance with doing this now, but I feel that it's super important, and all these kids, to me, all these teams are worth it. There's a quote that I wanted to kind of just share with you that one of my friends brought up on my Instagram page, and I asked her, I said, what's some times when you felt you were bold and brave? She says, when we lived in our house, a quote that we had on our wall was basically, sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of courage. Now, I was like, this sounds familiar. And there's actually a movie, and it was, I think we bought a zoo. And the whole idea with that is, the actual quote is, sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage. Just literally 20 seconds where it's just embarrassing bravery. And the promise is that no matter what, greatness will come with it. And so when I thought about that, I think with these youth, even if they try something and it doesn't go well for them, they know they did it. They know they tried something. They know that maybe that's not going to work for them. But in the back of their mind, they're always like, I tried that. Maybe I didn't like it. Maybe it wasn't for me, but I tried. I didn't let something stop me. I think a huge thing when I was a teenager, I let a lot of stuff stop me. Maybe I was intimidated. Maybe I was discouraged. Maybe I felt I wasn't good enough. And I think in those ways, I can relate to a lot of kids and a lot of teens and their families, and just say, hey, why not try? You may not succeed, but then we can give you tools or help you build those tools that you need to succeed and to keep trying. Because even Michael Jordan, he failed and he's a superstar. So I look at all the different people who they failed in life, and those failures sometimes were the best things for them because it helped them to continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm. I think you're just really talking about positive role models that these kids are needing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a huge piece.
Yeah. So you have a couple of workshops coming up soon in October, right? One's October 16th to 17th. That's for girls ages 11 to 14. And then you have another one October 23rd to 24th for the young ladies 15 to 18. So where can people go for more information about this?
Okay, perfect. So our website is boldandbrave.ca. So we played with the N, so it's just boldandbrave.ca. And then we also are on Instagram under bold_and_brave, and then Facebook bold space and space brave. So there's lots of information on all those places. Yeah, our email, like our website, has the most information for everybody.
Right. And you have COVID protocols in place as well for these workshops, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that everyone was safe, because our priority is the safety of everyone who attends as well as their families. But we figure this is something that is worth coming out to. And in turn, these teens will, I think, get a lot out of it.
Yeah. So what can they expect? They show up at the workshops and it's like guest speakers. Are they put into different scenarios and stuff? How are they taught?
Yeah. So basically, they'll be introduced to us. We'll do an introduction with everybody there. We'll do some kind of icebreakers so that everyone can kind of just get used to being there, because that's going to be your group for the 2 days. We have a keynote speaker that night who will then go over part of her situation, or her discussion will be kind of health mental health and goals. And then we'll kind of conclude for the night. The next day they'll come back. We'll start right into it with self-defense with one of our other guest, guest speakers. And then we'll do some lunch, scenario-based training afterwards with another keynote speaker and activity at the end. And so it's basically jam-packed, but good.
It does sound jam-packed. It actually sounds like a lot of fun and a great way to maybe connect with other youth and make some friends. You never know.
Yep, that's ultimately the hope. So eventually we hope to do some different events around the city where we kind of host them with other businesses. We're hoping to do one in November where people can get out with their families and do different things. And we just really want it to become a community-based business that everyone within the family can feel like they can reach out and be part of.
Well, excellent. I wish you all the best, Dana, with this brand new endeavor.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Looks like we are closely running out of time, but Dana Holland, founder of Bold and Brave, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Canada is a country where Canadians, for the most part, are able to live out whichever faith they practice and feel safe doing so. But imagine living in a country where your faith could cost you everything, including your family, or in some cases, even your own life. Our guest today is Greg Musselman with the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. He joins me today from Edmonton. Greg, welcome back to our program. So good to have you.
Good to be here, and nice to be with you, Jeanette.
All right. Now, Greg, you've traveled all around the world with your ministry, and you've seen all kinds of things and have spoken with all kinds of people, including those who have been persecuted for living out their faith. Now, if we turn our attention to Nigeria for just a moment, the numbers are staggering, aren't they? More than 600 people have been killed this year alone in Nigeria for practicing Christianity.
Yeah, it's a tragic situation, and I've just been interviewing a fellow from Nigeria, one of the leaders there. Yunusa is his name, and he's with a ministry called Christian Solidarity Worldwide Nigeria, and we partner with the Voice of the Martyrs with him. And hearing what's going on currently. I mean, with the Voice of the Martyrs, we have our what's called Persecution and Prayer Alert that comes out every week. And there's always something about Nigeria. We found that it's unbelievable, really. When you hear like large statistics, more than 30,000 killed since 2009, 620 or more that we know of anyway, have been killed already this year. When you start to look at it from the individual families, so a man named Jonathan Yakubu, his wife, and 3 young children were all killed. And then they had a massive funeral. They dig this big hole, and you see all these people, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and it breaks your heart. And, as you mentioned, I've traveled all over the world, but Nigeria is probably the country when I go there, when I document the stories of persecution and I come back, it's the one that usually hits me the hardest, because talking to people that have had limbs, taken off, there's scars, there's family members have been killed. We're trying to help them, the widows especially, and with the orphans, but it's a situation that is so brutal, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. And, so as I was talking to Yunusa, I said, well, if there's no hope that the government's going to, get in here and at least prevent some of this from happening, what's the hope? And his hope is in Jesus, that this side of eternity, things are pretty terrible, but there's something to look forward to. That's when we die. And that's really has to be presented before the people of Nigeria to make sure that they have their hope in Christ.
What a tragic situation they are facing over there. So, I mean, that just begs the question then, is Christianity growing or shrinking in numbers there with this persecution, or is it too early to tell right now with all of that?
Yeah, well, I think, in general, Africa has seen quite an explosion in Christianity. And we take a country like Nigeria, it's the most populous African nation, and the southern part of the country, for the most part, is predominantly Christian. The northern part of Nigeria is predominantly Muslim. And then you've got in the center part called Plateau State, a city called Jos, and many missionaries that came from Canada, America, and other places, that's where they were. It was kind of the launching point to bring Christ into the northern part of Nigeria. But what has happened is the militant Islamists have determined in their mind they are going to turn Nigeria you into an Islamic state and under strict Sharia law. And so with that, the Christians that are there, and there's significant numbers of Christians that are in northern Nigeria as well. There's churches there and there's communities like this particular one that I was talking about earlier, Gonan Rogo. It is a place that is a Baptist village, and there's a big Baptist church, and all the people that were recently killed were from that church. So there are areas and pockets where there are Christians. But these Islamists like the Boko Haram, who are listed as the second most terrorist group in the world, and then the Fulani herdsmen, they're number 4. So you got both these groups working in northern Nigeria. So there's a lot of persecution. Yet, to answer your question, is Christianity growing in Nigeria? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Now you're saying how dangerous the north was. So there's pockets of the south that are a little bit more safe than in Nigeria?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, we don't hear a lot of persecution, say in Lagos and some of the larger cities. I mean, there's still things that are going on, and that can be more of a cultural situation. Let's say a family is Muslim, they're living in the south, and family members become Christians. They could be killed, but they're more like being ostracized or losing their jobs, that kind of thing. But definitely there are, people that are coming into relationship with Jesus in the south, but because, again, there's not the persecution. And unfortunately, in the southern part of Nigeria, there's some pretty interesting theologies like the prosperity gospel, that kind of thing that, they're trying to follow the American way. And there's some things about the church that are a little bit odd. I found one of the things that was really interesting in like Plateau State in the center part, that's where we were. And then we were going into the north and doing interviews. And I remember one particular day I had interviewed a number of people. One guy told me the story of how his father and a number of the men in his church were driven by the Islamists into the building, and they killed them all. And he got cut and shot, and he had to pretend he was dead. Bukhar Samson is his name, and eventually became the pastor of that church. But I was, he was telling me the story, and I videoed it. In fact, I wrote about him in my book, and I seen the scars, and then talked to others that had been just through this brutality, and we've met dozens of children and orphans as a result of the persecution, especially in the north, that have come to the south. And then I was in this hotel, and I heard the music, and it was worship. And I go, I love African worship. And I'm in there, and then they put on the message, which was on video, and it was a prosperity message about getting a better car and a better life. And I'm going, man, and just down the road, people are dying for Jesus. So they have the same issues and the same challenges, Jeanette, as we do. But yet in the middle of all that, God is working, and some say in spite of persecution, but I think a lot of the time people have to make a decision. Either you're in the kingdom fully, both feet in, or you're not so sure. And of course, God loves us no matter where we're at, but it does cause people to really, consider the cost, which we're all supposed to do when we follow Jesus.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. And of course, speaking of dangerous countries to practice your faith, North Korea and Iran are certainly up there as far as most dangerous places to practice Christianity, right? So how is the underground church doing in North Korea?
Well, that's always a very interesting question, because for many years, our friends at Open Doors and other ministry that works with persecuted Christians have the World Watch List. And North Korea, year after year after year, more than a decade, have been on the top of that list. Now, Afghanistan is close to that. But in North Korea, because you've got what's called the Juche system, where it's kind of the worship of the Kim family, and it's basically a ripoff of the Bible. And Christianity, of course, exposes the falseness of Juche. So if you're caught with a Bible, you can be put in a concentration camp. You could be killed. And not only you, but your family members. They're so paranoid of Christianity. I mean, interestingly enough, 100 years ago, North Korea was actually stronger than South Korea. Then the war came along, and then there was the split. South Korea now has 4 of the 5 largest churches in the world. And then just across that border, just the demilitarized zone there in between North and South, is you can be killed for having a Bible or for meeting. But the interesting thing is that the church still is growing. It's growing at a faster rate percentage-wise than here in North America. Now, they can't meet publicly. They have their show churches there in Pyongyang, but it's controlled. They can't openly meet. And so they're meeting in their homes, and they have to be very careful even to tell their children if they're Christians, because if their children say something at school, the children come home and mom and dad are gone, they are put in a concentration camp, never to be seen again, or they could even be executed. I mean, that's how serious it is. And yet they're meeting in their homes. And what's kind of an interesting thing is I was talking to Eric Foley, and we work with him. He's with Voice of the Martyrs Korea in Seoul, and I've had opportunity to be there and to meet North Korean Christians who are absolutely amazing people. But I asked him, well, how is the COVID-19 and the shutdown, affecting the North Korean Christians? And he said, well, it's actually, for them, it's been a positive, because they have to work long, long days, have very little time at home to study the Bible, and they have to, again, doing this in secret. But because of the shutdown, they've been put into their homes, and the government officials don't want to go near them. And so they've been able to take time of studying the Bible in worship. And then with Voice of the Martyrs Korea out of Seoul, we broadcast into their, the Bible and, commentaries and encouraging the believers there. And so for them, this time has been actually in some ways positive. Now, when people say, well, how many Christians are in North Korea? And, it's really hard to know the numbers on these things, because what happens is so many of them have been executed, have been imprisoned, but it's still growing. So maybe 100,000 of Christians there, and maybe 30,000 of those would be in concentration camps. But people are coming to know the Lord. And again, getting numbers in such a closed society is very difficult. But I can tell you, the ones that are there are very determined. And when I was talking with Eric the other day, I said, well, how can we pray for Christians in North Korea? What should I tell my Canadian believing friends? And he said, it's interesting that he had asked that question of a North Korean leader many years ago. And this North Korean leader said to him, what, pray for us? We pray for you.
Now, Greg, you'd mentioned the pandemic. So now you also had mentioned to me earlier that you were supposed to travel to Turkey to speak with some Iranian Christians before this whole pandemic arose, right, for COVID-19. So maybe talk really quickly, in the amount of time we have left, about what you were going to do there.
Yeah, we were going to go to Turkey, the southern part, and I was actually going to be doing a trip to Israel with 100 Huntley Street. And that trip got shut down because we had to quarantine for 14 days, and the trip was 10 days. So I'm not a mathematician, but those numbers didn't add up. And then because I was in the neighborhood, I was going to travel with one of our partners that we work with. He's an Iranian, lives in Canada, and to bring aid to Christian refugees from Iran, and they were getting into Turkey. Now, I have been there in the past in Turkey and have met with Iranian Christians who have left the country because of the unemployment and the problems and the oppression and the rest of it. And so they have, got into Turkey. So we were going to go there and bring them food and aid and, and get their stories and find other ways in which we can help them. I know in one case, a family there, two of their children both have severe medical issues. And so Voice of the Martyrs Canada has been helping them. And, just to talk to them, to find out what's going on and how we can help them. Of course, everything got shut down. And, of course, we're concerned because the people that we're responsible for, that we feel responsibility for, trying to get the funds there. But I found, Jeanette, is that the Canadian people that support Voice of the Martyrs have not held back their giving. In fact, they're really wanting us to help persecuted Christians, because whether it's, in Turkey or in other places, especially Pakistan, India, Christian refugees from Syria that are in Lebanon, we're hearing so many cases that the Christians are not getting the food and the supplies that other people are, because they are not, say, Muslim, they're not Hindu, whatever the majority religion is. And so they're paying a huge price. And we've heard of Christians that in Pakistan, as an example, that are starving to death and are dying because they can't get food. If they would renounce Jesus, they can have food. But many of them would say, I'd rather die than deny Jesus. I mean, and of course, others they would say, well, I need food, I need to feed my kids. I'll just say I'm a Muslim, but in my heart, I'm for Jesus. So, I mean, God is a God of mercy, but these are, there's some difficult situations. In fact, we're going to have a conference call this week with a number of other leaders, well, actually next week, from around the world, that how the COVID-19 is affecting persecuted Christians, and ways that as international groups that work with persecuted Christians to help them get food.
Makes you realize how much we really take our freedoms for granted over here when you look at what the rest of the world is going through, what many people are going through. Greg, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be on the show, and it was nice talking to you today, Jeanette.
Yes, you as well. That was Greg Musselman, spokesperson with the Voice of the Martyrs Canada. On behalf of all of us here at BCN, thanks for watching.